Alright everyone, so today I want to shed a spotlight on one of the common heroes in the game that I actually think is one of the most powerful. Now there's a couple of contenders for this. For me personally, it's always a question of how many resources you're actually willing to invest into a champion and how much is he going to help you in certain areas of the game. And so one of my favorites that I actually used on my main account a fair bit is Armiger. We're going to take a look at him today. There's a lot of advantages if you're building Armiger, if you need him of course, compared to other champions, even certain legendaries, and we're going to talk about why exactly that is, how you should actually build him, what to do with him, and if he's the right hero to progress you a little bit more in the game. Might be one of the things that you haven't thought about that yet, so in case this is new to you, check it out and we'll see if it helps you maybe with Fire Knight, maybe with the spiders. Then if you're struggling with an early game account, then this is definitely one of the little tricks that can help you to progress a lot faster. Now typically when you're looking at a common hero, most of them are obviously not really worth building. They're traditionally used for food, and that is that. Armiger is a bit of an exception for a couple of reasons. He can really help you break through certain content in the game if you're unlucky with your general pulls. Now if you look over at the reviews, it becomes very quickly transparent where you use him the most. He's super useful in Spider's Den. Fire Knight is something where I personally used him a lot when I started Raid, because I got mega unlucky with a lot of pulls. For example, Coldheart was a hero that was super elusive initially for me. Not a champion that I pulled a lot. By now I have like 10 or more of them, but it took ages for me to get my first Coldheart, so I really had some problem with turn meter reduction, with max damage, and that's really where Armiger kicked in for me and why I made the decision to build mine. You can also use him at the Ice Golem's peak, but those are typically the areas where he would use him the most. Now you can also use him in a few others. It really depends on what you need him to do, but these are the three where he excels the most. And if those are areas that you have trouble with at the beginning, it might actually be worth building him, and well, here's why. Now we have him as a Sacred Order champion. He's also of Spirit Affinity, and he has only 2 abilities. One of the cool things of going for a common champion is you can actually just buy him at the shop. So you don't have to wait for pulls. If you just refresh the shop a couple of times throughout the day, you can buy him directly. And you can also then, for example, use copies of him to book him. So you are not relying on any kind of tomes here. You can literally just get another Armiger and then feed him and get a book or get a skill here for him. So this is super useful, and it's one of the things that make him quite strong and make some of the rares actually very strong compared to legendary champions. Because if you pull a great legendary, that's amazing, but you also, in order to get full value, need to book them, and those tomes become very rare at the beginning, even for epic champions. Now when we talk about Armiger, so what are we talking about here? We have a 3-turn cooldown that can be reduced to a 2-turn cooldown, where enemies that get killed by a skill cannot be revived. That makes him interesting for Ice Golem, because if you time it right, you can now take those adds out and the Ice Golem can't revive them, so that's really helpful there. But more importantly, when you're talking about the Spider's Den, for example, is that the damage is based on enemy max HP. So you can do a lot of damage there early. Coldheart, Septimus, Acrisia, and also Gnud are others that are working off enemy max HP. And this is super useful when you have them, but a lot of them are very difficult to get, and Armiger is very easy to get. So he's somebody that can you help very early on with all of this. For me personally, when I started Raid, the more important thing was actually his A1, because right now you're attacking a single enemy, but you're decreasing the turn meter by 30% if the attack is critical. Now, if you actually paid attention to the channel, then you actually heard some other champions highlighted that have similar mechanics, and that would be Allure. Allure, on the other hand, is epic and a little bit harder to get unless you started off with a starter link where you get her. In that case, Armiger is not necessarily something that you need. But if you don't have somebody that has decent turn meter control, he's one of the easiest to get early on. And this is a fantastic ability to have. All you need to do is to make sure that he has a 100% crit rate, and then you can operate with this. Now the main advantage of Armiger is obviously that he is mega easy to get, that you can literally buy him, but you still have to invest resources into him. Personally, I think you don't even need to get him to level 60. Typically, level 50 is enough to get massive amounts of value out of him. Another advantage is also that his main stat is actually defense, because being a common champion, it means that his base stats are a lot lower, so survivability for him is going to be crucial, and since defense is his base stat, you can operate around HP and defense a lot more and don't have to, for example, spec into attack to also get some damage out of him. So let's take a look on how we can actually build him and what are the important factors here. So I personally built my Armiger a long time ago, which you can actually also see reflected in the gear. Pretty much all the gear that he currently has, with very few exceptions, is still 5-star gear. Why is that? Mainly because you need him in the early game. Once that you move into a late game account, it is not really needed anymore because you will have better alternatives. But since at the start you want to farm a lot of savage gear, you want to get accessories from the Spiders dungeon, you really need to make sure that you're getting good value out of the champions that you have, so Armiger can be a huge tool. I eventually upgraded mine to level 60 just because I felt he deserved it. He did so much work for me on level 50 that I was like, okay, you deserve to be upgraded to its fullest extent. I have him right now with 100% crit rate, which is the most important part, but you can actually see that all of these stats is not really impressive. He's not at 200 speed, we have only a bit of HP for him, and even his crit damage at 200 isn't really too high. So this is all very achievable, and it helps you a ton in the Spider's Den and specifically also in the Fire Knight, because once that you open that shield up on the Fire Knight, he will come in with those auto attacks and then get damage in. So you can, for example, also throw him in Relentless and try to get multiple hits in. Anything that speeds him up and makes him hit his A1 a lot more often is fantastic for the Fire Knight. You then always have to make the decision whether or not you also want to use his A2 on the Fire Knight, because if he's only there to control the turn meter, then his A1 is all that you need. On the other hand, in Spider's Den, you will much more be reliant on the A2 for damage, but even there, you can just use him for sheer turn meter control. So I have mine for inaccuracy, because you still need that accuracy to land the effect of the turn meter control. I have him also in a bit of crit damage, but he is quite versatile in what kind of gear you can use here. You can put him in Relentless, you can put him in speed gear. As long as you get that 100% crit rate, you're going to be in a pretty nice spot. Masteries, I didn't fully get the masteries in for him. I made sure, on the other hand, that on the offense tree, I went for War Master, just so he gets a bit more damage in. And again, here it really becomes a question of how much are you going to use him. So I also made sure that I give him some extra accuracy through the support tree. Law of Steel is of course another mastery that's always very important. And this all played out before relics were even a thing. So now technically you can boost his power even more by using relics for him. But generally speaking, I think he's a very useful champion that is oftentimes overlooked. And he is for sure an early game champion, but he's somebody that can really boost you a lot. So if you're looking at the daily grind and you already have a couple of champions on level 60, but you're really struggling to go through Spider's Den or Fire Knight, he might actually be the one tool that you can use in order to make that work. So I would heavily recommend that you just check him out. I have him on crit rate gloves here. Again, the gear that he has doesn't need to be too insane. Depends on how much you need him actually for damage or just for the utility that he brings. Even the chest plate here is attack. Please don't ask me why. I can only assume that I had no other chest plate at the time in perception gear and needed the accuracy, because again, the attack percentage main stat doesn't really help here. You need defense if you want to boost the damage, but it shows once more how useful he can be even if you don't have the perfect gear. Again, this guy was on level 50 for the longest time, and the only idea here with him was to try and control the turn meter of the opponent and survive through the fight. So if you're currently struggling with a lot of these tools and you need somebody that can manipulate turn meter or has this max HP damage, he might really be the best option that you have, because he's so cheap to get and he doesn't need any insane items. It's a little bit of a trick. You can also use him for Dark Fae, by the way, so there's a few more areas in the game where he can be useful, but obviously he is also a bit of a niche champion. When you're moving into the late game, he's not going to be massively useful for you any longer. But if you're at the beginning of your raid career and turn meter manipulation or max HP damage is something that you're really struggling with, then this could be the champion for you. So check him out, build him a little bit, don't invest too much here. But please keep in mind that this is one of the little tricks that you can employ if you want to progress a little bit faster in the early game and you are struggling in some of the areas mentioned before. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope that you have some fun with this. And again, see you in the next video. If you made it this far, give the video a thumbs up and have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.